Yeah, this is actually like, this is where it goes.
No, it's supposed to sit like this.
You say that about the COVID-19? Joe took our gerbs!
They took our job!
A handful of times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny, I thought you just came up with that.
No, not that clever.
Not today.
No, it's a weekend.
So we discovered something that's a little bit of a bummer.
Yep.
Some of you might have already known this. We weren't necessarily afraid of building mounts and getting, having to maybe move oil pan a little bit, but it's pretty significant. So we're gonna describe why a flathead will not, without a shitload of work,
it's doable.
fit into an S10. This is an S10 clip on the front of a Shoebox Ford.
Yeah,
That's why it's not gonna work.
It's doable, but it's a lot more work for a car that's eventually gonna get swapped anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole plan all along was this thing's gonna end up with some other type of V8. I'm not 100% decided yet. It could be a 289, could be a small block Chev, could be a Toyota Power. I don't know. We haven't decided yet. But that sort of accelerated that because we were gonna run this thing for a year with the Flathead and then decide next year. So surprise, we get to do it already.
Is what it is.
So here's some of the pointers that we want to give you guys as far as if you're wondering if this is going to work. A lot of the video that we're going to show you is just kind of B-roll of while we had the motor in here, kind of what we ran into as far as fitment issues, what it looks like to make it work with the stock cross member. So we'll start off by talking about width. The S10 clip is a lot narrower than the Shoebox front end.
Yeah, when we measured, the S10 clip is 21 inches from width-wise.
Roughly 21.
The Shoebox one we discovered is 24 inches.
Yeah.
So 3 inches is a lot to make up.
It is, yeah. So some of the clearance differences is that the cross member on the Shoebox is also a little bit flatter, It's like there isn't a big rise on it, and that's where you run into a significant rise on the S10.
Yeah, and on the Shoebox too, the cross member kind of does a sweeping motion out front.
Yeah, it tips forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the S10 one just kind of dips down and goes straight across. So in order to get your motor mounts to work because of all of this, you might run into clearance issues with your steering linkage and your steering box.
If you were to sit this in here and try and use the S10 stock cross member, you've got clearance issues with the oil pan. So you might be able to get away with using a Flathead V8 truck oil pan, which has a deeper and rear sump setup in it, and it has kind of a nice gradual taper towards the front of the oil pan. Good chance you can notch that out and make that fit and probably not lose too much capacity in the oil pan. You might not even have to mess with the pickup tube on that setup. So that's what I would recommend. If you're trying to use a car oil pan with this thing, you're gonna have to section it, move the whole sump back.
You're gonna have to relocate your dipstick as well when you do that. It changes the whole dynamics of the oil pan.
Yeah, it does, and you might end up having to modify the pickup tube, or you could try out the truck one. If you want to fit a flathead in one of these things, you have to be willing to do a lot of screwing around to try and make stuff work. We do think it's still possible, but it's a significant amount of work. Now, like Donnie was describing in the front here, we've got an issue where we've got a couple of different issues. So you've got, not only does the Shoebox frame just all kind of sit a little bit lower, cross members lower, there isn't a big rise on it. It's also wider. So when you factor for the front of these flatheads, they've got motor mounts that are on the very front. They're literally bolted to the water pumps, whereas like a traditional V8 engine has motor mounts that are on the sides, kind of like in the middle of the engine, lengthwise. So it's much more simple to build motor mounts when it comes to that kind of thing, whereas, yeah, it being way up on the front, like Donnie described, you're really looking at this area that's closing in on the steering box.
Yeah, and you gotta remember, this thing weighs about 600 pounds, so yeah, you have about 300 pounds on each side, but when you turn, that changes the dynamics altogether.
Yeah.
And to really reinforce it, you might have to tie it into the side of the frame along with the cross member as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's quite a bit of screwing around. And then on top of all of that, you also have the sort of the level, the angle of your engine, because you need it to sit level in the front, sort of, I don't know, what do they call this, longitudinally? Maybe latitudinally. Yeah. I don't know, whatever it is. You know, the direction that points back with your car. Because you've got to carb on these things. So, you know, you have to have, and also, of course, like oil inside of the oil pan, that's an important part of that as well. But you need to have this thing sitting level, or the fuel in the bowl isn't going to sit correctly. So there's quite a bit of things to factor in with this. And that means it might have to sit pretty low. So that runs into issues with clearance of the oil pan. That might mean having to section more. We couldn't get it that far because obviously we're not cutting things apart just yet to try and make it work. Yeah. Now, with the sides, this goes back to it being a very deep kind of V shape on the S10 cross member. You have clearance issues potentially with the exhaust headers here too.
Yeah, they might actually hit the upper control arms where the little nubs are for the nuts, along with this rear bushing housing. Yeah, this whole area could very easily rub on your exhaust manifold.
Yeah, so there's more things to worry about there. So, if I were to do this, if I was desperately wanting to keep this Flathead in here, if that was the ultimate goal, S10 front end, Flathead V8 in it, which is an awesome idea, and I really hope somebody's pulled it off or will pull it off, because it would be really neat to retain the originality of having that Flathead in here. If you do it, honestly, move the cross member. So, well, I shouldn't say move, modify it. What I would do is I would be cutting out this tall portion of it, and I would actually take box tubing, and I would be building my own cross member up at the front here. So building the cross member to have its own sort of V shape or whatever, building it so you're clearancing it for all of the steering components. I think it's possible.
It should be possible.
I really think it is.
Tight, but it should have enough space to do it.
Exactly. And then if you're notching this cross member and you're moving it around and you're modifying it, clearance isn't going to be an issue. You're not having to screw around with the factory oil pan. You are probably having less issues with exhaust header clearance. It should be possible. We can't sign off 100% on it, but if you're willing to do an S10 clip on the front of this thing anyways,
what's a cross member?
And you really want to keep that Flathead V8 in it, yeah, you're probably going to be able to pull it off. But we're not going to do that because the whole plan all along was to put a different motor in this thing anyways. This is really just to get us by for another year. So I guess this moves things a few steps ahead.
Yeah, speeds up quicker than planned, but that's cars.
Yeah, it really is. So thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully this was informative. We kind of had to learn the hard way, so hopefully this is saving you that trouble. Watch us in the next video. We're actually going to be tackling some other tasks on this thing. We'll show you guys how to put a swinging brake pedal in here with a firewall mounted master cylinder. So thank you very much. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Stay safe, wash your hands.
Yeah, right.